Hello, everyone. Today's topic is emotional intensity or high emotions ruining your marriage? And the best way to figure this out is to ask yourself a bunch of questions, which we're going to get to in a few minutes. But let me ask you this. Are there a lot of high emotions in your household, like anger, frustration, being annoyed, just expressing the upset emotions? Is there a lot of that in your household? And do you find that one partner is more likely to expel their anger onto other people in the household, or even you as a wife in the household? Because it's really uncomfortable for those that are more empaths, sensitive, highly sensitive people, and their husbands are really intense emotionally. Because often these women take this on as almost their own, and they want to fix it. So I have these two amazing guests today. I have Jillian and Jan from Entwined Lifestyle. Do I say entwined or entwined?
It's entwined lifestyle.
Yes, exactly. Because I'm like, you're twins, so I wasn't sure if there's a play on words there. But
well, it's all about entwined different aspects of our lifestyle, but the word twin isn't entwined, so it was part of our whole branding.
I love that it's part of your branding. I think it's so clever. So welcome, Jillian and Jan. They are relationship and life coach. Yeah, your life coach, relationship and life coach.
Yeah.
You are also like boundary specialist. So you help professionals set healthy boundaries so they can confidently communicate their needs so they can live the best life possible. So I want to welcome you here so that we can talk about emotional intensity and how to deal with it in marriages. So thanks for joining me.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so cute. I love this. How do we tell you apart for those that are watching? How do we know who's who?
I feel like we have different shapes of eyes. Mine are much more round, and hers are much more narrow. Mm-hmm. I think is the biggest thing as we've gotten older and aged into our own personal identity. But yeah, that's probably the easiest way to tell us apart.
Amazing. I agree with you. Definitely differences in eyes. So let's just hop into this. So what does emotional intensity look like in a household or look like in a marriage? I think of like anger. I think of almost like unleashing and barfing your emotions onto others is what I think of. But tell me what your definition is of emotional intensity.
It's definitely, highs and lows, drama, chaos. It's like someone who feels uncomfortable in like a calm, silent state. Like they constantly want to create, drama or pick a fight just for like no apparent reason. So it's just like it's almost like you're walking on eggshells.
Yeah, they're fearful to be vulnerable and really express what is hurting or bothering them or triggering them. And so instead they operate from the trauma response, which creates the intensity and the heightened emotional responses.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. When you say they respond from a trauma response, what does that actually mean?
So a lot of times when somebody has unresolved emotional wounds from childhood or past experiences that they've gone through, it could even be within the marriage itself. If somebody perhaps stepped outside the marriage, that could become a trauma response within the marriage. But in terms of trauma responses, something becomes a trigger for them in their environment or something their partner might do. So then that gets us into the fight or flight response, or even fawn or freeze. So there's 4 different types of trauma responses that our body either shuts down, or we might run away. We might just become very recluse. We might want to fight back and become very fiery in our energy. So it all just depends in terms of how we respond. Everybody can respond differently to trauma responses, but it's how we handle those uncomfortable emotions that can send us into the different type of trauma response that we're experiencing.
Yeah, it's almost like 2 trauma responses are talking together, especially if, just say your husband is the one that's expelling this anger per se. And then you as the wife, maybe you're used to maybe feeling like it's your fault. It's your fault that you caused it, so now you need to fix it. Or you're feeling their pain, so you want it just to end because you're like, I can't handle this myself. I just want to fix it so it stops.
Right.
But really your partner needs to actually process it. So it's almost like 2 traumas of inner childs just kind of bashing and just creating this cycle of chaos. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. And I think a lot of times partners will intentionally provoke their partner knowing that it might be an emotional wound in terms of like emotional manipulation. A lot of times we see that show up, which creates that emotional intensity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think a lot of partners do it on purpose? Like you just said, on purpose, or do you think it's just it's their way of coping. So like a husband might want to blame, like they honestly don't feel like, they don't know that their emotions are actually their emotions. They truly believe, kids, your wife, they're making me angry. Like they have this feeling like others are causing me to feel this way, and they feel like they've been wronged. They feel like others are making their environment, their life miserable. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
So I think it can be a little bit of both. Sometimes it can go into the victim type mentality and be like, why is everybody making me angry? Why? And really have a lack of self-awareness of how they're responsible for their own emotional responses to certain stimuli in their environment. But I also think sometimes these individuals can tend to also provoke in situations and also create as a coping mechanism. If something is like provoking them and they don't know how to proactively, assertively handle it, then they could provoke and get back at their partner in a way that's destructive to their relationship.
Yeah, it's like an eye for an eye. Like you did this to me, I'm going to make you feel exactly the same way. Which is so incredible. When you do this work and can set those boundaries, you can see them, like the game they're playing, and they're not doing it on purpose to necessarily to be a game, but you can see their trauma response, and you're like, I'm not letting it in. Like I see it. And then that can completely, when you get to that point, change a relationship, because it takes two to fight or two to have this like passive aggressive or aggressive argument. But when one doesn't engage, that's when the marriage really shifts. So let's talk about some strategies. We can kind of go back to some of the stuff that you just talked about. We'll thread that through some strategies. So where would you start if you're finding your partner is very emotional intense, you even recognizing your own emotional intensity, whether it's passive or aggressive? Where do you go? Where do you start?
Well, if one partner is really heightened in their emotional expressiveness or displacing their emotions onto the connection, we can't fight fire with fire. So what we want to do is remain very calm and collected as much as possible and stay in a very logical mindset if we can, because if we have emotion fighting emotion, it just heightens everything and gets even more out of hand or creates heightened conflict. So if we can remain very calm and we can assess and use discovery questions, what we call them. Can you help me understand what it is that you're experiencing right now? Or can you help me understand where you're coming from? And so we're just gathering insight to really understand our partner and coming from a very calm or safe space in order to really understand the trigger that they might be experiencing.
I like that. Can you say those again? Where you want to understand where they're coming from. So what were some of those phrases you just said?
So I would use discovery questions, and they're
Yep.
open-ended questions. Say, help me understand how come you are feeling this way right now, or can you explain more? I want to understand your perspective. So we're gaining insight and assessing where they're coming from to understand what has triggered them or what has set them off in order for us to logically work through the problem.
Because we don't want to assume, because then that can also create more heightened intensity and emotion if we make assumptions. So we definitely want to assess and give them the benefit of the doubt to make sure we understand them correctly and understand, because if we can't understand each other, then how can we solve the problem?
Oh, absolutely. And that's so often what one partner really just want, both partners really just want to feel understood. They want to feel heard. They want to feel seen.
Mm-hmm.
They really want to feel understood. So I often use that. I understand. I understand doesn't mean you agree. It just means you understand where they're coming from.
Yes, absolutely. We're validating that we understand their perspective, not necessarily that we agree. I'm glad you made that a point. Yes.
Yeah, just as simple as sometimes I understand, or sometimes even how can I help? And sometimes I help is, it doesn't mean you're going to fix it. It just, sometimes they have nothing, they might not even have any way that you want them to help you. They just want to feel heard. Like, I just needed to unleash that. I just needed to let that out.
Yeah,
I just
or
needed
how
someone.
can I support you?
Yeah, how can I support you? I like that one too. How can I support? How can I help? How can I understand? Just simple statements like that will often, like you said, diffuse it right in its tracks, because all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't have to yell to be heard and to be understood. Someone actually heard me with one simple statement. So that's wonderful. What other strategies would you use?
So you could also say, it seems like we're on different pages right now. I want to make sure I understand where you're coming from. So you're pointing out that you're on two different pages, you're on different perspectives, or it doesn't seem like we're aligned on this. How about we talk through it? So, or when would be a good time to talk through it? Because sometimes people need time to process their emotions. And right now, in the midst of the conflict, is not a good time to talk about it. So you might say, it doesn't seem like we're seeing eye to eye. How about we revisit this later tonight, after dinner, or tomorrow morning when we both have calmed down? So we're really just like coming from a bigger picture perspective and taking ourselves out of the direct conflict or power struggle we might be experiencing in order to kind of strategically guide to a better way of resolving the problem.
Which is what is about setting healthy boundaries with our partners in order to honor the relationship. So it's not me versus you, it's we versus the relationship problem, so we can stay united as a team and be able to work through that constructively.
Ooh, I love that.
And that allows us to use our 4 C's of communication, which is calm tone of voice, because 90% of conflict is due to heightened tone of voice. So, and 10% is only words. So if our heightened tone of voice is, really up there, then our partner's not going to be able to even hear us or understand us. So using a calm tone of voice. The second C is using concise messaging. The less we say, the better off our message is going to be heard. Using constructive. If we want that win-win outcome, we have to be constructive. If we use destructive language, they're going to shut down the conversation, potentially react, stonewall, whatever it may be. And then the fourth one is being consistent. If we're not consistent, then how can we actually solve a problem or engage?
Or build trust. If you're not consistent, You're not going to build the trust so that your house feels safe and open and that you're not being nagged or judged. So I think consistency is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I love 3 things you said there. Tone is so important. So often we focus on the actual words. Like even with my husband, he's like, I'm saying this, this, and this, but I'm like, it's the tone. It's communicating something totally different, because those words just speaking like, I need you to empty the dishwasher versus I need you to empty the dishwasher. Like they're so different. Tone 100% changes the words and the meaning. So I think it's so important that we really listen to our own tone and just reflect on it. The other thing I liked is we versus the marriage struggle. I think that's a really powerful and just a really it's a very nice statement so that you don't feel so alone in your marriage struggles. And then
Definitely.
the last thing I really liked there too was taking some time to maybe talk about this later. But here's the argument I hear from women often is, but I need to solve this now. It's going to eat me up. What if I go upstairs and he stays in the living room and we just need some cooling off time? I'm just going to stew upstairs. I need to make sure he's okay so that I feel okay, or I need to get this resolved. So what are some strategies there when one partner really needs some cooling off time while the other partner's like, I need this fixed now because that's what my body is, my nervous system is telling me I can't relax.
Well, most often you're not going to be able to solve a problem if you're in a reactive state.
Or if one partner is completely disengaged, you're not going to really get anywhere in terms of creating a resolution. So if that partner feels like I need to solve this now, or I'm going to stew, that would be a good time to focus on doing some self-care or self-love work in that moment in order to process your own thoughts and collect them into a way that it's going to be very positive when you do come back and have the discussion. And that could be some deep breathing exercises. It could be journaling out your thoughts. Just some simple 10-minute or less tools can really help us get to a state of clarity. So we make sure that we're not coming back in a reactive state and blaming our partner, that we're willing to see both sides of the coin so we can find a resolution to the problem.
And if someone says, I need to solve this right now, they're actually in a me mindset, not a we mindset. So it's going to be hard to hear what our partner feels or is thinking if we're not in the mindset of we are going to solve this problem together.
Yeah, I think there's so much power in that. One person said here, where one partner needs a break, another needs to talk. What do you do there? I think there has to be some respect there. Like you said, we can't actually solve it if one partner won't talk. So using that time, it's creating that habit of, okay, I'm going to go upstairs, I'm going to journal it all out. And I'm a big fan of journaling. So I think you can start with I feel so angry right now. I'm so mad right now. And just start to just scribble on a page everything that you're feeling. Then start asking yourself, why do I feel this way? And then understanding a little bit more about why you're so triggered, why you're not feeling heard, or why you're feeling so upset in that moment. So I think journaling will actually give you a lot, like you said, perspective into how to re-engage with your partner after. So especially when you're starting this, maybe for the first time, really starting to change the communication patterns. It's so much more than surface. If we're arguing about the dishwasher, it's not really about the dishwasher. It's really about maybe respect on my husband's side. Maybe it's about me feeling resentful that it's not getting done fast enough. And why am I feeling resentful? Have I felt like my whole life I've been very responsible and had to take care of things? And my husband is at respect because he's felt like other people are maybe walking on him. There's just so much deeper than the dishwasher. So to spend some time journaling, cooling off, getting that perspective as to what do I need and why am I feeling like he's my enemy right now?
Yeah. And I think too, it's important, even though you want to talk right now, and your partner isn't ready to talk, set a time before leaving that conversation. When can we talk about this? Because that gives each partner certainty and clarity. Okay, we're going to address this relationship problem in the next hour or tomorrow morning, but you're going to set time aside for the relationship and making it a priority,
Right.
so it's not being dismissed.
Ooh, what about waiting till the next morning? It's so hard to wait, right? Because you might wake up with your stomach feeling sick because you don't know the outcome. You're feeling so unbalanced because it's tricky, because if you don't feel grounded in your own self and your partner's unbalanced, it throws you off center too, which makes it so uneasy, right? To go to bed angry or to go to bed with that tension between you. What strategies do you have for waiting till the next morning to have that conversation?
I think this is where you have to understand your partner may not be as receptive or open. So if you try to have the conversation too soon, you're going to end up with the same outcome that you're currently facing. And so that's your time to look inward and do things that make you feel good. Find a creative hobby, do something that's like you're passionate about, or read a book. Just take that time for yourself and nurture the relationship with yourself. Give yourself self-love. Even though you're creating love with your partner, learn to nurture the relationship with yourself. And that's going to help sort of bypass that time, because once again, we want both partners to be receptive to this conversation.
I love this. It really is about nurturing your self-love, because do you need to have that conversation right now because you need their validation? You need to know that they still love you, that they're still wanting this marriage. Is it that you need that from them? And if they're the missing piece to you, that's not okay. We all have to be whole on our own and know that, regardless, it's so sad to say, but regardless of what happens with this marriage, I'll be okay on my own. But yeah, and even having these conversations, maybe even before the next argument, being like, okay, this is how I feel when we have the cool off time. I feel really uneasy. I feel like worried. I feel concerned. Even having those conversations with your partner beforehand, just so they know maybe what you're possibly experiencing. But really, those are your emotions, and those are things that we have to work through on your own, why you feel so worried and why you really, really need their comfort in that moment.
Yes, because in that moment, I know someone said they feel sick to their stomach waiting, that tells me that we might have an anxious attachment style going on. And so anytime we feel really anxious waiting, that means we need to take action. We need to get outside of our thoughts. And whether that's going to go do a physical activity or going to go do like an art project, like painting, something creative, cooking, whatever it might be, to get you out of your thought process and into your body, and physically doing something can allow us to help process that anxiety, because that anxiety we are responsible for, that we might be displacing onto the connection. A lot of times we see anxious attachment style connect with an avoidant attachment style, and so that's why they're triggering each other back and forth kind of on a regular basis, which creates that emotional intensity in the relationship.
And so the more you create security and safety with yourself, the easier it is to create that security and safety within the connection.
Bingo. It always comes back to us, right? Like I work with women and I help them save their marriages on their own, because so much of it starts with us. Couples counseling is incredible. It's powerful, but there's another element there that you need to work on yourself. Like you said, if you can create that love, that security within yourself, that everything's going to be okay. I know that everything's going to be okay. You can give yourself that reassurance and believe it. That's when, like you said, it'll help to heal some of those attachment styles. But it's so hard. Maybe we're jumping kind of in another area, but do you mind if we talk for a minute just about anxious attachment? Let's just talk a little bit about the healing that needs to happen there, how you get yourself to a place where you feel like you're more secure within yourself, and you don't feel like you need your validation from your partner to say everything's going to be fine, especially during those waiting periods of cooling off.
Yes, we want to, if we tend to seek validation from other people for our own security, then we're going to constantly be left in a state of emptiness and seeking external validation. We need to find a place within ourselves where we can validate ourselves and find inner peace. Inner peace and happiness comes from within ourselves. It cannot be found externally in our environment, from another person, from shopping, from any sort of external gratification somebody might seek in order just to feel better in that moment. So we really need to process our emotions and really focus on finding our inner peace and getting to our core. And we can do that by operating from our value system. So if we operate from our top 5 value systems on a regular basis, such as maybe communication, trust, honesty, whatever those might be, that also gives us clarity in as our roadmap to success in our relationship and how we set boundaries. So we might even set personal boundaries with ourselves that right now I'm feeling really anxious. Maybe this is a cue for me to take some personal space and work through that so I don't displace that onto the relationship, because displacing the anxiety on the relationship is the same thing as somebody like stonewalling and displacing it onto the relationship as well.
Oh, I just love that. You're not displacing your anxiety onto others. I think it's so powerful when you, whether it's like a fight with your partner or whether it's just like maybe some troubles with work and you want to come home and you just want to like say it all to your partner, like this happened, this happened, this happened. Instead of doing that, like displacing that emotion onto them, really figuring out what is it that I need at work? What is it that I need to solve this problem? Instead of going to someone else, even if it's a parent or a best friend, to get their advice. Because I think it's really important to see who are you kind of dumping your problems onto, and are you looking to them to solve your problems,
Right.
or do you actually know what you want to do to solve it and you just want to like have a conversation about it, but you already know what you want?
Yeah, and I think too with emotional intensity, you can get a lot of that emotional enmeshment, which we're trying to break some of those codependency habits, things that we might have like learned in our childhood or past relationships. And so this is really just helping you hone in on what feels good to you and what you need, so that way you can actually advocate for yourself and establish healthy boundaries with your partner in order to get past some of those roadblocks you experience.
Oh, I love this. Enmeshment. Now we just threw in that word too. Let's just talk about enmeshment for a second. So we're enmeshing. Let's go there.
So I think with emotional enmeshment, this means that we don't have healthy boundaries. So our emotions are an extension of our partner. Our partner's emotions are an extension of ours. And so things just get really messy very quickly. And it's like we're almost dependent. If like if our partner's in a bad mood, then we're in a bad mood. If our partner's in a good mood, then we're in a good mood. So we're constantly identifying with people around us to determine who we are, how we feel day to day. And we're actually can't wake up or may not want to wake up each day without knowing that that person's right there as like a security blanket.
Hmm. Oh, wow. There's so much going on. Like, it's really not just about someone being angry and expelling their anger. Like, it's so deep.
It's much
Oh, it's so deep. What other questions did I have for you? Okay, what if you hate conflict? Like, here we go. We're with a partner who's super emotionally intense and you just don't like conflict. Again, maybe you're an empath and that's one of the reasons, or you're used to people pleasing. You haven't spoke your opinion for many, many years because you've never felt heard, or you felt like you're needy if you spoke your truth. Like, if you hate conflict, how do you start to embrace someone else's emotions? Because, yeah, how do you start with that process?
First, we need to kind of wrap our mindset around that conflict is actually healthy for relationships, because if we're just shoving everything under the rug and we're just coexisting, that means at some point in time the volcano is going to erupt and everything is going to come spewing out of it. So we need to see conflict as a healthy tool within our relationship in order to resolve deeper issues that might be present in the relationship. And that's when it gives us an opportunity to set healthy boundaries in order to feel respected, valued, heard, and get our needs met.
And I think learning to be assertive and knowing that if I don't take care of this, what is it emotionally costing me every day in my relationship, in my marriage, with myself? What am I, how's it impacting me on an emotional level, financial level, if I don't take care of this problem today? And so just knowing that you can solve conflict or get more comfortable with it when you have the tools. When we have our relationship intelligent tools, it's much easier to navigate, and we actually feel confident when we do face adversity or challenges because we know how to handle it like a pro.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those emotional intelligent tools.
So learning this communication, being assertive. Sometimes people are so fearful to advocate or speak up. But when we use assertive communication, it's the most effective communication. It comes in our relationships. And that doesn't mean that we have to use heightened tone of voice. It means that we're just using a medium pitched tone of voice and we're speaking very clearly, calmly, constructively, so that way our partner can hear us. And we're trying to get from A to B so we can get to C. And so that's just being able to, speak up and not have fear around asking for what we need. We have to be able to advocate for what it is that we need if we want to be able to solve these problems together as a couple. So I think being assertive is one, learning to set healthy boundaries from an I and we perspective. A lot of times people will teach boundaries as like
ultimatums,
more like ultimatums, like do X, Y, and Z, or if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to do this. Instead, we need to say, I feel uncomfortable when there's lack of communication. I value open communication. How can we work on this together? And just really honoring that relationship and working as a team.
So yeah, we're asking our partner to work with us versus demanding they do different tasks or operate in a different way. We can't demand change. We need to ask for change and figure out, negotiate what works best for both partners, because it needs to honor both perspectives.
And we get our partners buy-in, because if they're resistant to change, if we ask them, they get to say, have some bit of that control, that power that they automatically desire. But when we ask them, they feel more respected and are more likely to find compromise in that interaction.
Ooh, I just love that. It's so true. It's not an ultimatum. At sometimes it can come to that point, but you don't start with that point. Absolutely. It's a really, really kind, loving conversation. And I like how you use the word negotiation, because it's not a compromise. Compromising, you will be sacrificing parts of yourself, which will lead to resentment and other crazy emotions too. I shouldn't say crazy, but other emotions that aren't comfortable. So I love how you explain that. One other question I had was about values. You talked about, was it when we were talking about enmeshment? No, we were talking about secure.
We were talking about how we use our top 5 values as a roadmap.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that for a second. So I think that's when we were talking about creating that security within us to help with that anxious attachment, operating from your value system, so that your 5 values, so that you can create a roadmap to help keep you secure, right?
Yes, and we can do this through our own activity value statements every single day. So we usually recommend for our clients to establish at least top 3 out of the 5 they want to operate from. And also, if you have another little tool, if you have 3 values in that match with your partner's top 3 values, more than likely there's longevity for that relationship to be healthy and turn out in a positive manner, because both people are kind of on the same page. Our value systems really give us a key to how healthy the relationship is going to be. But in terms of creating alignment with our authentic truth, using our top 5 values, if we write out 3 value statements every day as actions that we take, such as, I value open communication. So today I addressed with my boss at work about something that needed to be done, or I value honesty. So I let my friend know it didn't feel good when she canceled last week for dinner. So we're just like using our value statements, and we're writing them out daily, like as a journal type exercise. And we're creating alignment and commitment to our authentic truth, which makes us easier and more confident to operate from when it comes to our relationships.
Oh, what a great strategy. Let's go over some of the top values. So I've heard honesty, open communication. What are some of the other top ones that you see your clients, or you use yourself?
I would say, go ahead. Transparency, integrity, kindness,
loyalty, teamwork, authenticity,
growth mindset,
family oriented. You can use these, you can use all of these. So sometimes you can use these in your work atmosphere too, or friendships, and it works in all relationships. And sometimes your values might waver a little bit depending on like the work versus personal, but the more alignment you create, the easier it is for you to feel like I said, confident in your authentic truth in terms of who you are and asking for your needs to be met.
And when you live accordingly to your values, this is how you know when someone violates your boundary, and know which boundary you need to set or address with the person who's violated it, because this allows you to, you're going to get that gut instinct. Your body's going to send you a signal, this doesn't feel good. And that's your cue to take care of you, but also set a boundary with your partner, knowing that you need to advocate and speak up in that moment.
Okay, this has been incredible. We have jam-packed this live with so many tips that will help you with not only emotional intensity, but also secure attachment, dealing with your triggers, your inner child, your trauma wounds, your enmeshment, and to really work on setting boundaries. So, wow, we covered a lot more than I thought we were going to cover. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think one of the biggest things that we need to do is make sure we implement active listening, because if we're not actively listening to our partner, then we cannot be able to find a way to create a solution that's going to work for both of us in regards to that problem we're facing. And then we stay in the problem, not get to the solution. So active listening is more important than actual talking.
Oh, yes, because sometimes when people are talking, you're already thinking about your response and then you don't actually hear everything they say, which then makes your response not as good as it could be, as effective. So, no, very true. Active listening is a skill big time to, and someone to like, just even reworking what communication looks like. If you have to, I know this sounds a bit strange, but if you have to have a piece of paper and sometimes take notes as your partner's talking so that you can like then look and just be, I just need a second to gather my thoughts. Like we have this belief that communication needs to be face to face and it needs to flow. But myself, like sometimes I'll talk, when we're having a heated conversation, I know it might sound silly, but I'll have my eyes closed because I can communicate so much better when I just listen and I don't have as much stimuli. When I'm trying to look at his facial expressions, listen to his words, sometimes I have trouble keeping track of them all. So I think it's really good to get creative to try different ways of communication. It doesn't always have to be face to face. And if you have to go to text messaging or try some different stuff if you need to. But yeah, for those that have trouble remembering, because I talk to a lot of women, like I know how I felt when he said that. I just can't remember all the words he used. So yeah, I think it's important to just figure out a style that works for you so you can be a great active listener, but also using a tone and the words and all that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too, one partner can try to like steal the conversation. And so I'll recommend for couples to set a 2-minute timer so each person has the ability to speak, but then also listen. So that way it's an effective conversation as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. Oh, wow. If we went a whole hour, can you imagine what else we'd cover here? But we're going to wrap it up there. How can everyone get a hold of you? I know you have some incredible programs and some free gifts on your website. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you can reach us at entwinelifestyle.com, and we have our Boundary Badass program, which teaches people how to set healthy boundaries in their relationships, all different kinds of relationships, but especially our romantic relationships, because if we don't have boundaries, it's going to be very hard for us to have a successful marriage. And I think, you know, just being able, and then we also have our free boundary scripts, or you can take our free boundary quiz too to see how strong your boundaries are in your relationship. But just knowing boundaries is the key essential, and it will give you all the language that you need in order to navigate these bumpy moments where the emotional intensity arises.
Amazing. And I'm Beth, and you can find me at Soulify Wellness, and I help women save their marriages in 12 weeks. I have a great little gift. It's called 3 Proven Ways to Save Your Marriage. So you can grab that from my bio and Instagram or go to www.freemarriageguide.com. So, oh, it's been so amazing, and I can't wait to do this again. And thank you for all the wonderful information you shared today.
Yes, thanks for having us. It was great.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you.